What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some first impressions for Warhammer 40k Mechanicus 2. A TRPG set, of course, in Warhammer 40k, putting you in the role of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but in the case of the second game, also the Necrons. But I'm bringing you this video because just yesterday, they officially announced the release date for this game, which was May 21st. This was a bit of a surprise to me because that is also the kickoff of the Warhammer Skulls event, which is an event they do every year to celebrate their video games. If anything, I would have expected the release date to be announced the day that kicked off, or, maybe even shadow dropped, but it was just kind of an oddity, I guess. However, it also reminded me of something. All the way back in August of last year, 2025, the publisher for the game, Casito Games, sent me a preview key that, if you remember, I made a video about it back then. However, at the same time, they also said that eventually that build would turn into the full release of the game and that they would be updating it and whatnot, and that I was free to cover it. So I obviously jumped into that build to check this out. Now, it's worth mentioning that this is not the full release version of the game, but it is pretty far along. Things with like the achievements and whatnot are working, and I feel comfortable calling it a first impressions, but I really can't do too much more with it until we actually see the 1.0 release, which may actually come release day, but either way, that works for me because I got a couple of things to do in the meantime. With all of that out of the way, however, so Mechanicus 2 is, of course, a TRPG, putting us in the role of two different factions this time around. That's interesting because they have two different approaches to combat, even if they are a bit similar. This means that there is just straight up two campaigns that will be separate from one another, and things like progression and mechanics change between them, while also advancing the formula a good bit from the original. Now, when you go to fire up a game, you have a variety of different difficulties, including a customized option, basically easy, normal, hard, and very hard, and then you can go in and adjust some things accordingly via the custom difficulty if you so choose, and you can also choose to skip the prologue and tutorials if you want. The prologue serves as essentially the expanded tutorial that both sets up the game's story alongside introducing the mechanics of both factions before allowing you to choose which one you want to jump into a campaign of. Now, story-wise, the setup is pretty straightforward. The Adeptus Mechanicus has arrived on, I believe it's Hecatus 4 or something like that, the planet, and their actions in trying to uncover all of this xenotech has awoken, of course, the Necrons who are fighting back against this invasion, leading to a conflict over the planet, with the Mechanicus trying to conquer the place and the Necrons trying to defend it, of course. But that's where things get interesting. Now, in the case of both factions, you have 5 sort of leader hero type characters that will be commanding several different troops, be they Scutari or the various members of the Necron courts. And the mechanics of each one are slightly different, but there are some through lines that make it relatively familiar. So let's talk a little bit about that, which, by the way, I think might make the review a little odd because I'm going to have to cover all of that when I get around to it. But the basics for each are that the Mechanicus, just like the original game, work off of cognition points. They have a variety of mechanics to build up cognition points, and then you can spend them on improving your abilities by simply allowing you to use more of them. Essentially a spend and burn resource as you would be used to. Now, the Necrons are a bit different. They work off of dominion. When they attack things, they get the damage dealt to the enemy as acquired dominion, which can then push their dominion up levels per encounter. As the dominion level goes up, they unlock more and more abilities on their Necrons to actually use in combat, giving them, of course, some versatility as they deal more damage. On top of that, being Necrons, when they go down initially, they just go into a downed state, and then they can be revived instead of immediately killed when that happens the first time, though any damage they take in that down state will also just kill them. And by kill them, I mean they teleport away as Necrons actually do, but I think you gather my meaning. Combine that with each sort of hero character that will be leading all of the individual guys into battle who have their own unique abilities and passives and even like skill trees and stuff for you to pump up outside of combat. And you've got the core of the back and forth tactical system, all of which kind of also messes around with the strategic layer of the world map. So you've got an actual map of the world we are trying to either conquer or defend here, and there's some mechanics there as well outside of just picking missions to, of course, partake in. On the Mechanicus side of things, they are trying to build forge cities. Each one they build allows them to get up to higher tiers of their abilities, that you can spend the resources gained in combat upon unlocking. This is how you're going to sort of research some of their main upgrades for like the Skitarii and stuff. On top of that, each of like the hero type characters also has several different like little skill trees that as you use them in combat, they will be able to advance down, giving them extra abilities and utility in combat as well. Whereas on the Necron side of things, they have the court system. So rather than have just like Skitarii that they can recruit, each of the Necron hero guys has a court that they command, basically groups of units that they can bring into combat with them, and then of course revive as necessary. Each individual character has a slightly different court, and you can both use resources, again gathered in combat, to upgrade not only the Necron Lord themselves, but also their courts and the groups of guys you can take into combat with you. They can also equip relics and the like, so again, it functions a bit differently. They also have an awakening system. Again, they'll sort of acquire points in combat that they can spend on awakening from their sleep, as it were, giving them things like more relics to equip and just generally more access to their abilities, seeing them progress as they waken from their slumber in order to defend this planet. But then there are the missions themselves. So, an interesting way that this particular game approaches combat encounters is that you will send characters out on a mission. You're going to assign one of these hero type characters, and then the individual units that you'll be able to deploy on individual skirmishes. Now, you'll also be able to pick a couple of stratagems at the beginning as well, which will increase vigilance but give you some bonuses. Vigilance is essentially the difficulty of the mission you are about to undertake, which can be affected by a variety of different things, though the simple explanation is that the higher vigilance is, the more enemies you're going to face in combat. So ideally you want to keep it a little on the low side. Now, each mission is composed of several skirmishes. These are the actual battles you will be fighting. In between those skirmishes, you can have random events which can give you bonuses and status effects that you'll carry into combat as well, chances to heal your units. And while your hero units have to make it out alive, the rest of everyone else in the battle is a little more, let's say, disposable. With a lot of the back and forth between the factions and their individual mechanics, of course, making up a lot of the combat depth, which is what I'll be looking forward to in the actual review itself, just kind of messing around and seeing some of the interplay between these things. There are a couple of other smaller mechanics, things like armor and energy shields, which can reduce incoming damage. Different unit types, which I haven't checked out, that kind of thing. There is some advancement there in terms of just what units you have available to use in addition to your hero characters. So, putting all of that together, I'm pretty excited for this one. Mechanicus itself was a, I would say, short and sweet TRPG that did some fun things and didn't overstay its welcome or anything. So I'm hoping Mechanicus 2 can follow suit, while obviously expanding on things, though it has obviously just straight away changed some of the mechanics there. And I'll simply be curious to see how these play out over the course of the game, how each of the campaigns feel, if they feel decidedly different, what kind of endings those lead to, as presumably each campaign may have a different ending or something, I would assume. And once I get access to the actual full release version, I'll dive into that review, which may well be on the actual release date for all I know. But either way, looking forward to jumping into this one. Hopefully you guys are as well. But that is pretty much going to do it for these first impressions. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you're looking forward to the review, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, and stick around. All that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.